Hey VMblog readers, I'm Andy Syrewicze, Technical Evangelist for HornetSecurity. Now, hey, it's been an interesting year to be in IT, and I'm here to give you my predictions and insights for the coming year. Now, the pandemic has continued to not only change society, but it's continued to alter how we do our work, and at this stage, it's become apparent that most organizations won't be as on-prem as they've historically been. Now, not only will this continue to drive SaaS service adoption, like what we're seeing with the mass adoption of Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, it will also continue to help drive the continued move into hybrid cloud deployments. Now, despite what some folks in the industry think, hybrid cloud is a destination, in my opinion, and not a temporary state for most organizations. Pair that with the fact that hybrid cloud technologies that we're seeing in the recently released Windows Server 2022 and Azure's Tech HCI, and we can see that hybrid cloud is a destination for Microsoft as well. And historically, where Microsoft has led, the industry has followed. And I don't think that's going to be any different this time. Now, finally, security will continue to be a top of mind for deployments of all shapes and sizes. We're reminded of that on almost a daily basis now. Security is no longer just the security team's concern, it's everyone's concern, right? And so my advice for the coming year, I guess in summation, is this. Invest in SaaS and hybrid cloud skills and technologies. In terms of security, don't just assume it can't happen to you. Remember, everyone is a target. Assume breach, train your staff on security, both IT and end users. Secure your data, and I wish you all a fruitful and safe 2022. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Spiros Xanthos, and I'm the Vice President of Product Management for Observability and IT Operations at Splunk. My 2022 prediction is that serverless computing will be big and will demand new observability capabilities as a result. On the near horizon, all cloud services will be serverless in nature. It's about simplicity for both the developer and the customer, with no server infrastructure to manage and think at scale. A serverless world helps with resource utilization, agility, and delivers advanced customer experiences. The past 18 months with COVID have taught us that digital experiences are more important than ever. And it's becoming increasingly difficult for organizations to predict what resources they will need to deliver these customer experiences. As DevOps teams continuously move beyond server infrastructure and container-based applications, traditional monitoring won't show them what's going on in their ecosystems. That's where observability comes into play. Advanced observability is imperative for helping organizations operate in serverless environments, and adopters of both will drive unparalleled customer experiences.
Hi, I'm Mike Morey, President and CEO of Bluebird Network. Here at Bluebird Network, we provide 4 really important tools to empower business communications. We deliver high-speed, low-latency, dedicated internet service. We connect businesses with their own private fiber line connections. We offer total data center solutions through our owned and operated data center facilities. And we bring secure private access to mission-critical cloud applications. Over the course of 2021, we saw a marked increase in the demand for all of these services thanks to lockdown and the rise of remote work environments. In 2022, these needs are not going away. In fact, we see indicators that the demand will actually increase in perpetuity as a digital world establishes itself as the new normal. Technologies surrounding the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, and evolving 5G capabilities continue to grow, and we at Bluebird Network are well established to enable the next wave of necessary bandwidth-heavy industries. This is in large part due to our creative building strategy and extremely resilient network architecture. While the pandemic highlighted the digital divide and spurred governments and the investment community at large to more quickly build communications infrastructure to underserved communities, this has always been a focus of Bluebird. We are uniquely positioned within the market and are looking forward to an even more prosperous 2022.
Hi, I am Betsy Doughty, Vice President of Corporate Marketing at Spectra. We are seeing a handful of trends in the industry. Obviously, data protection and long-term digital preservation is a big trend. We're also seeing hybrid cloud workflows be a big trend. But the biggest trend that I want to talk about, and something that is very personal to Spectra, is around security, specifically how the pandemic really opened the door to more security breaches due to virtual work. In fact, SpectraLogic was hit with ransomware in May of 2020, and we were asked to pay a $3.6 million ransom in Bitcoin. And because of the way that our network was set up with snapshots, because of knowing that we had an air gap copy on tape from the night before, we said no. We did not pay the ransom. We also looked at what we would recommend to our own existing customers and partners for how they could mitigate and overcome a ransomware attack. And in an interesting twist, we broadly shared our story. You can find out a lot more about that on our website. What we did find is that there were some things that we could do in our own product line. We did things like build in immutable snapshots, encryption, obviously having an air gap copy, especially if it's an offline copy to tape, replication, multi-factor authentication. All of these are things that we have now standard built into our entire suite of products. That is something that Spectra is really passionate about, sharing our story and helping others overcome and mitigate from ransomware attacks. Our director of IT has recorded a podcast. We have a paper on our website, as well as a handful of blogs, so you can read about our attack and how we overcame it. And we also have a lot of information on what we are calling our attack-hardened data storage and protection solutions. Thank you for letting us share our predictions for 2022.
Hello, I'm Glen Kosaka, Head of Product Security at SUSE. It's been a wild 2021 with COVID lockdowns, remote work, SUSE's acquisition of NuVector, and most recently, the Apache Log4j vulnerabilities, which have made for a busy holiday season. I've been talking about the importance of security automation all year. So my first prediction for 2022 is that automation will really start to become put into practice in 2022. Let's take a look at what does automation really take. It really takes looking at security and how to build that in from the very early part of your pipeline. This includes scanning of images for vulnerabilities and compliance violations, but it even extends to scanning deployment YAML files for any types of security or compliance violations in the deployment YAMLs for every deployment or microservice that's going to be deployed. Next, it's critical to implement and automate zero trust security so that the runtime behaviors of every application can be defined before they're deployed into a production cluster. And this can be automated in such a way that all of the important network connections, process, and file activity for every workload is defined in that pipeline so that once that application starts to run, if there's any deviation from that allow list, those actions can be blocked. There may also be global security policies for containers that security teams may want to put in place regardless of the application-specific security requirements. Those might be things like certain allowed egress network connections or certain processes or file activity that should be blocked, for example, SSH or SCP in containers. But the most important thing to work on, and that could be a hurdle in implementing automation in 2022, is getting the people, processes, and technology that all need to be designed to work together in order to really implement technology. In 2021, I've seen many companies start with looking at the processes that they need to put in place for their automated pipelines And now I think in 2022, we'll see actual implementation of technology to enforce those policies. So that's a very positive sign. Now let's take a look at this log4j vulnerability that was discovered last year. Let's see how critical automation could be in trying to prevent exploits of it. First of all, images and running containers should be scanned for not just the one vulnerability that was disclosed, but the 3 vulnerabilities. And these need to take place as soon as possible after the vulnerabilities are published. So updating the CVE databases that are used for the scans, and then immediately running these scans to tell you where these vulnerabilities could exist in your images and in your production deployments of containers is going to be critical. Now, if these vulnerabilities are discovered, especially in running containers, it's critical to automatically remediate those and run them through the pipeline so that they're redeployed to remove the vulnerabilities and do not represent an attack surface for hackers. Admission controls should be put in place that block any images that contain these vulnerabilities. Additional rules may need to put in place that require image scans for all deployments so that when an image is scanned, it can be checked for these vulnerabilities. And if any of these vulnerabilities exist, those deployments can be blocked, preventing those containers from even running in the production environment. Now, if there are any production containers running that somehow have been able to run with this vulnerability, or perhaps this was a 0-day before this vulnerability was even published and hackers had found out about it and were actively trying to exploit it in your infrastructure, it's important to implement strong egress controls, because in the case of the log4j vulnerability, most likely what's going to happen with this remote code execution exploit is that there's going to be a connection, an external connection to a command and control server. And typically some type of malware is going to be downloaded, or there could be other types of software or vulnerable packages that are trying to be downloaded. And that's why it's critical to implement strong egress controls to prevent any unauthorized connections outside of your Kubernetes cluster. And then finally, there are some WAF rules that can be put in place that can detect attempted exploits of the log4j vulnerability. Now, these WAF rules are not an end-all. They can be circumvented, but they're better than nothing. So it's important to implement and inspect the network traffic for incoming egress connections with these WAF rules to see if somebody is trying to exploit or find a vulnerable server running this Apache log4j library. Now, all of these things need to be done ASAP, but think about how difficult this might be if you've got 100 clusters across multiple clouds and there's no central choke point for the security team to address and block these. That's the world that we live in today, and that's why it's so critical to implement automation so that these security activities, these scans, these admission control rules, these egress connection rules can be deployed immediately across any number of clusters and clouds that is in your infrastructure. Now, my other prediction for 2022 is that the security frameworks, such as the MITRE ATT&CK for containers or the Zero Trust DoD reference document, will frame the guiding principles for protecting Kubernetes and containers. They will help us to make sure we're addressing the top attack vectors and to move this new zero trust security model into production. This is what is really required for automation to become even possible in this new cloud native environment. Thank you and have a great 2022.